Online.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Health Transformation webinar. This is Cade Archibald, your host, and so excited to be here with you. And we got Regan Archibald on here with us. Regan, how you doing?
Good.
All right. So today we're talking about stem cells, brain, fasting, some really cool stuff. So really like how you can amp up your brain function, right?
You got it. Yep.
Nice. I like that. Everyone can use a little bit of better brain function, I'd assume, right?
I know I can every single day if I can. Just a little nudge in the right direction always helps.
Yeah. All right. Well, awesome. Well, we're looking forward to diving in. If you guys have any questions, anything that you want to dive in further or have questions on some of the stuff that he's going to be covering on intermittent fasting, type it into the chat box. We'll make sure we get you answered here. So let's dive in.
Okay, let's do this. So there's some new science that I'm going to be uncovering today. And some of the science is actually they're showing how fasting can influence stem cell proliferation. And one of the scientists that we've all looked at is Walter Longo. He's an Italian researcher, and he's done a lot of studies on how fasting actually can influence greater proliferation of stem cells. But now what the researchers out of MIT, what they're pointing to is they're actually saying, wow, some of the fasting mechanisms is it actually is the body's ability to use fatty acids. And this fatty acid oxidation is what causes the stem cells to actually grow and proliferate. So it's this kind of new finding that was published in the Journal of Cell Medicine. And so I'll share some of that with you guys today, because I think the biggest thing that we look at, the biggest challenge is, how can we influence our body's own healing mechanisms? And as you know, Cade, we have hundreds of people every month that come into our clinics getting stem cell therapy, and we want to give them the right environment so their stem cells can thrive and really start to help their body heal. And so now we're looking at some of the mechanisms behind why we've always introduced intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating to our patients. But now, hopefully today, we'll have just a little better understanding of what the science is behind that. So that's my goal. So are you ready to fast, Cade?
Love it. Yes. Let's do this.
How about you guys and you guys? So, all right, we got our Instagram crew going. So good to have you guys here. Dominic's actually on this. So Dom, he's on a field trip. So he's like, I'm on a field trip. Don't worry. So I got one of my boys on here and a lot of.
I was going to say, shouldn't he be at school?
Apparently he is, but he's on a field trip. But it's okay. This is great. So let's talk about this. So someone asked, like fasting before stem cell treatment or after. Well, we'll jump into some of the science on that. But what we like is we like your body to be fasting on like a day-by-day process where you're doing more of like a time-restricted eating. 8 to 10 hours is going to be great. And it's even best, your stem cell rates increase if you do like a 5-day timed eating. Your stem cells are going to increase. So it'd be ideal from optimal performance. I don't know if that's my friend Roy over there at Natural Stacks, but or if that maybe it's Seth. But hey, guys, but if you look at what the ideal scene would be is to go on more of a calorie restricted or even a restricted diet for about 5 days before you get your stem cells. Then your body's own stem cells are going to be just really bubbling and active. And then when we put these brand new stem cells in your body, it's just going to cause this multiplying effect in your healing process. But then the real key is, and what we look at is after you get the stem cells injected, making sure that you've got about a 6 to 8 month window where stem cells are really proliferating and growing. So making sure that you've got more of a time restricted eating throughout the course of the 6 to 8 months so those new stem cells can just really start amplifying in their effectiveness. And so I think as you look at that, you say the biggest challenge is I get hungry. Kate, would you say that's the biggest challenge? Oh, hey, it is Sean there on the Optimal Performance Podcast. Hey, Sean.
Oh, nice. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's the hardest thing is you get hungry. I I don't, and I guess once you get it down and get used to it and things, I don't really know. I think hunger actually decreases.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Initially it is like, it's getting past that, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to eat my arm. I got to eat something. And also just like having the intention, because sometimes, I'll wake up if it's on the weekend or something, and maybe I decided I was going to fast, but I'm feeling hungry. I like start rummaging in the pantry or something. I'm like, oh, hold on.
You're not eating. Yeah.
I'm not eating yet.
Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest thing is like if you don't have the intention and you're just going through the motions, you just like catch yourself snacking or eating or doing something like that. And then you're like, oh shoot, I just broke my fast and I didn't really need those nuts.
No. And this is the key is when you're doing the time restricted eating, you give yourself a window when you can actually eat. And so maybe you guys could plug in, what's your biggest challenge when it comes to doing intermittent fasting or time restricted eating, where you just really cut off everything until a certain time. So just to give you an idea, like intermittent fasting would be where you have some coffee or something or tea in the morning, but then you don't eat until lunch. So you basically fast through breakfast. So your breakfast is really a break fast where you're breaking your fast for lunch, and then your last meal maybe like at 7 at night. And so you're eating between about like 11 or 12 to 7 at night. And so that would be like a pretty classical time restricted eating. Or intermittent fasting. Time restricted eating is where you get rid of like the tea, the coffee, anything that would spark a metabolic process. And because some of the ideas that like Sachin Panda has in his book, I believe it's called Circadian. I can't remember the name. Do you remember the name of this book? Sachin Panda, Circadian. Maybe you could look that up, Cade.
I'll look it up.
But it's a phenomenal resource. But yeah, he says anything that triggers your liver, and your liver has to metabolize like your herbs, your vitamins, your tea, your coffee. And so even that, for some people, it can get you out of the fasting state because it wakes up the digestive system. But now what we're learning that may be even more important for stem cell proliferation is going to be the opportunity to get your brain and your body in ketosis. And that's what they're actually starting to look at, where it's these oxidations of fatty acids, so where your body can actually utilize the fatty acids. That's what's triggering a lot of the stem cell growth. So let's talk about your brain for just a second. But before we jump into that, I want to hear what your challenges are for those of you who have tried time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. What are the biggest challenges you have? And maybe we can give you some tips on how to overcome those. Because what I find is if you put your body and you just limit and restrict when you can eat, all your choices go away. So at night, like Cade was saying, rummaging through the pantry, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, it's past my eating. Or like one of my sons, Jonah, was eating a bowl of cereal last night. He had this, like the rice puff cereals, and I was like, man, that looks so good because I love cereal. But I'm like, no way, I'm not eating it. Not only is it not good for you, but I did not want it to break my fast. And so if you have challenges, let us know. But if you look at your brain, 57% of your brain is fat.
Hey, Reagan, we had someone come in, make a comment here. So my biggest challenge is knowing that if I get a low blood sugar or hungry, like Cade was mentioning, then I get a migraine. So moving into time restricted eating has to be so slow.
Yeah.
Which I think that brings up a good point. You want to like inch into it.
Yeah. I think that's really good. And if you look at, if you guys couldn't hear that, that's where it's, if somebody is going into a fasting state and then the migraine gets kicked in, and that's so frustrating because you're like, man, I'm trying to do something good for my body, and then my brain reacts, or my blood sugar drops so low. And it is really important. Like Kate said, maybe your window is 14 hours, and let's just try and get it to 13 hours for about a week, and then 12 hours for about a week, and then 11, and then 10, and then see where your sweet spot is. But the real key for avoiding the hunger and avoiding the headaches and kind of the symptoms and side effects that come from fasting is very simple. It's all you have to do is stay hydrated. Put sea salt in your water, maybe even a little lemon. But hydration is actually the key. It saved my life when I first started experimenting with this a couple of years ago. We had another question from Sean. Family meal times, habits are hard to work around. And this is where, I think it's more important to, enjoy food with your family. I know some people who they go on the, 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, because there's a lot of research that that's the ideal way to eat as far as like performance goes and stem cell growth. But I'm like, no, I'd rather eat dinner with my family. And so I think the hardest thing is choosing like 2 meals out of the day that you want to eat with your family. And maybe you just have to push your lunch to 2, and then your final meal is at like 9 if you have kids who are, busy and out and about. I would just try and structure it around that because it is tough. And it's really tough if you're trying to eat a ketogenic diet and you got these amazing carbohydrates that you want to consume. So, but anyway, we'll get into that. So if you look at your brain, about 57% of it's fat and 38% of it's protein, maybe 5% of your brain is carbohydrates. Now, I'm not saying that that's like the perfect, equation for your diet, but it actually is something that's pretty darn close. Because if you look at your brain when you're working off of ketones versus glucose, when you're working on glucose, your brain is just scattered. It's almost like running a car. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, Cade, running your car on gasoline versus electricity. And so the electrical energy is where you've got smooth energy. There's not like the shifts. You know how gasoline cars, you shift gears? Well, in Cade's Tesla or in my Tesla, it's just like, it's one even gear. And that's what your brain is like on ketones. And how does it feel when you drive that like that on electrical energy, Cade?
Feels nice.
It's a very good feeling. And so that's our ideal is let's get our brains working on this electrical energy. And so if you think about this, how does our brains break it down? And what's the toughest thing when you're getting into a fasting state? And just like our patient asked who's getting migraines, one of the big things that you want to do is you got to get your liver nice and cleansed. Your liver is actually the organ system that starts metabolizing these fats and creating all these ketones is what they're called. There's 3 major types of ketones, which we'll talk about. But if your liver is not doing well, then it's going to be really hard to get into ketogenic state. Now, we have a device called the Level, and it's just a breath test. And next time you guys are in, if you want to see how you're doing, if you're in a ketonic state, then we can test that for you for sure. We had another question. Is it safe to work out and practice intermittent fasting? And that's a great question, because if you look at working out, I think that might be Jody, I'm not sure, but good to see you. But if you're working out and practicing, the best time to work out is actually when you're in a fasted state, because then what happens is your liver has the storage unit of glucose. And when you can completely deplete your liver of all of the storage of glucose, usually it takes about 12 hours. So if you wake up in the morning, let's say you finished eating at 6 at night and your workout's at 6 the next day, it's perfect, because then your body is forced to use energy from other sources besides that storage of energy in your liver. Besides all that sugar, your liver is pushed out as much as it can, and now your body will start breaking down fats, which is pretty ideal. So hopefully that answers your question. Not only is it safe, but it's the most effective way to work out. And then after your workout, you want to wait about 1 to 2 hours after your workout before you eat anything. Because if you don't, then what's going to happen is when you go and eat, once again, instead of forcing your body for that hour or 2 after your workout, forcing your body to continue using fat as an energy source, because your liver wants to restock the supply of glucose, then what's going to happen is if you eat right after, your liver doesn't have to find energy somewhere else in your body. And then the other thing that happens is autophagy. And so you want your cells, all those cells that are kind of, they're not really vibrant, autophagy happens, and that's where your cells actually eat the other cells as energy. So you guys are all catabolic creatures, and kind of creepy if you think about it. So, but it's ideal. Okay, did you know your cannibalism is kind of a thing in your life as a human?
Oh yeah, I like I mentioned, sometimes I get the urge to eat my arm.
Well, your cells are already eating your other cells.
Yeah,
So
it's like an internal instinct. It's not my fault.
Right. It is. The lowest performing cells in your body are the ones that are like getting consumed. So this cannibalistic idea is a pretty reality. Just giving you guys something to throw up about. So anyway, so get your liver really healthy. And yes, go and work out fasted.
And for everyone in the Instagram world, I posted this on the webinar, but wanted to make sure everyone had the author, and the book is The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda.
Circadian Code by Sachin Panda. And he's phenomenal. He's out of Toronto and great researcher there. Okay, so there's different types of ketones. And when your brain loves these ketones, because what it does is it allows your brain to create more glutamate, which glutamate becomes glutamine, which is the number one neurotransmitter in your brain. We have abundant sources of glutamine, but when you have a lot of glutamine, you can be very focused, very concentrated, but also feel super relaxed. And then GABA is the other neurotransmitter that gets created when you're in this ketogenic state. And so if you have enough GABA, then you're going to feel more connected, you're going to feel more calm, but you're going to have this nice ability to relate to other people, and it'll get you out of your space. It's kind of like getting in your meditation. So acetoacetate, that's one of the ketones. Beta hydroxybutyrate is the other one, and there's now supplements that you can actually take that actually trigger and create the ketones for you. Now, some of them are very effective. Some of them taste like garbage. I think the best thing, instead of using a supplement to induce ketosis, is use fasting. And it's much better for your stem cells anyway. So here they are. You've got acetoacetate, beta hydroxybutyrate, butyric acid, and acetone. So these are all your ketones. So let's look at your intestines real quick, because what we've got about 7 minutes. And so what my goal is I want you guys to just get really convinced, like, okay, so how can I get the best stem cell proliferation and migration? And how can I make fasting simple? So those were the two goals for today. Now, number one goal is always, how can we get your body to heal quicker so we can give you back your health independence? That's what I've devoted my life to, is to train people and give people the keys and the secrets on health independence in an easy way that's simple, and a way that anyone can do, no matter where you're at. If you've got a chronic disease or 5 chronic diseases, if you're fit and you're healthy and you just want to take it to the next level, or even if you're just starting to feel like your something's not right, I want to give you the solutions for that. So very first place where you're going to have the most abundant source of these CD34 stem cells. And these CD34 stem cells are what can really help influence your entire immune system. They're found in your intestines. And so we always say diseases always start in the digestive system. Chinese medicine's looked at that for 3,000 years at least. Ayurvedic medicine, even Hippocrates, all disease starts in the digestive tract. And it starts in these villi, these crypts. So you can see in the crypts, this is where you're going to have massive quantities of stem cells. And if you look at your small intestine, the surface area is massive. It would cover a tennis court if we were just to lay it all flat. But these villi are what absorb the nutrition in your body. And in these villi, that's where you can actually get the stem cell amplification, is when you're eating the right foods. So certain foods that cut down the migration of stem cells in these small intestines are gluten. Now, gluten has been shown time and time again to increase this particle called zonulin that influences the contraction and opening of these gates, these tight cell junctions. And so if you're eating a lot of gluten, that cuts off the migration of stem cells. The other thing that does is casein, which is one of the proteins in dairy. So ideally, you want to avoid those two things. Sugar is the other thing that does it, probably more than any other food on the planet. Sugar is the hardest on these crypts in your small intestine. So if you look at it, one of the researchers that was done on fasting, was in Science Direct, And what Yilmaz, he's the leader of this study, and his colleagues, they fasted mice for 24 hours to study how the fasted state impacts intestinal stem cells. So they're looking at these stem cells here. They found that a single fast augments intestinal stem cell function in both young and aged mice by boosting fat metabolism. So there it is. It appears that using fats for energy preserves the health and function of the intestinal stem cells, and that the ability to break down and use fats for energy is impaired in older individuals unless they fast. And so if you want to get in the ketogenic state and stay in ketosis, one of your very cool secrets is making sure that you stay in this fasted mode. And a lot of people miss that. They just start their morning, they guzzle the bulletproof coffee, and then they're eating a ton of fats at lunch, a ton of fats at dinner. Sometimes there's no vegetables, and that's like the worst. So Keto Green, Dr. Anna, we're going to release her podcast very soon, but she has the concept of Keto Green. And Cade, what's her book called? The Hormone Reset? Is that her newest book coming out? She's an endocrinologist, a good friend of ours, but
You caught me again. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Okay. Well, Cade's our Google king right now, so thank you, Cade. Okay, so it's kind of interesting, right? And now we look. Was from the Cell Stem Cell 2018. End of last year, they said acute fasting regimens have pro-longevity and regenerative effects in diverse species, and they may represent a dietary approach to enhance age stem cell activity in tissues. So for those of you who have had your shoulder injected, like I just had my shoulder injected, I just had my brain done again, and it's been phenomenal, but I'm making sure that I'm really keeping my fasting tight. And so it's something that you guys can do as well. And I think the other thing that you want to look at is, okay, well, what else is fasting doing? Well, not only is it helping my fat oxidation, and it gets me in ketosis, but it's also helping these old stem cells take on new life. And then the autophagy that happens when your old cells that are no longer useful, they get cleaned out of your system. So it's going to prevent diseases like cancer. So I think all of us could vote for more of that. Okay, so
it's The Hormone Fix by Dr. Anna Cabeca.
And Dr. Anna Cabeca, The Hormone Fix. So you guys get yourself a copy of that. It's about ready to be released. So very interesting. But she talks about the Keto Green. And when I interviewed her, I said, "Oh, that you finally somebody it has a name for like the right way to do a ketogenic diet, which is the Keto Green." And I would just put on there the fasting Keto Green, and that's like your ideal way of eating, where your stem cells are going to be very robust. So here's a final, kind of some of the final research from Cell Stem Cell. They said fasting increased fatty acid oxidation in the intestinal stem cells by driving both a robust PPAR-mediated FAO program in intestinal stem cells, and by increasing circulating levels of triglycerides and free fatty acids that can be then used by the cells to generate acetylcoacetate. So this is your one of your ketones for energy. So basically, just to break that down, what fasting does is it increases your stem cells' ability to use the fatty acids as energy and to produce ketones as the metabolic byproduct from that whole cycle. So get your butter. And that's the moral of the story. For years, we've gone without fats, and what it did in America is we got fatter, we got more depressed, and we got on more medication. And so now we're back in this new era, but do it the right way, because if you're not eating vegetables are what's going to clean out your liver, clean out your intestines. It's going to put a huge burden on things. And then the other thing that you'll find is you're just not going to have the energy and the ability to make those ketones if you're not eating the vegetables with the fats. So Cade, how many vegetables? What would you say, good pound of vegetables a day, 2 pounds? What do you like?
1 to 2 pounds. So, with every meal. So even like, I think for if you aren't doing like the timed eating, or if you just still like breakfast food, getting like a bunch of greens, like maybe put a nice egg on there, and avocado, something like that is I love it. That's probably one of my favorite ways to eat.
Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Eggs,
Just get
avocado.
lots of good greens.
Yep.
And with every meal, just make sure you're getting some good leafy greens, vegetables. Don't go too starchy, especially if you're trying to focus on losing weight. So try to avoid some of the starchy veggies.
Yes. Okay, guys. Well, any last questions? We maybe have time for one more question, and then we're going to close this thing off. But I'd encourage you guys to get in here and get your ketones tested on our little device called the Level. It's very simple. And let's see who can blow the highest score on that to see how much fat you're actually burning. So,
hey, Reagan,
yep.
We had a question come in from Melise, actually. She asked, how long should I fast?
And is this Melise, our cousin?
Sure is.
Yeah. Hey, Melise.
Reagan.
Nice.
A question come in from.
Okay. So, Melise, how long should you fast? Well, ideally about 14 hours every day. And then what I like to do, it depends on your goals. If you're looking to burn more fat and put a little more lean muscle on, then maybe 1 day a week or 2 days a week restrict the amount of calories you eat in that day. So even break it down to like 6 hours. But ideally, you'll feel pretty good if you do like 9 or 10 hours where you're eating. So start your first meal at like 10 in the morning, and then your last bite at like 7 at night would be a pretty good cycle for most of us. Cool. Thanks for being on, Melise.
Awesome. All right.
Cool. Take care,
Thanks, everybody. Have an amazing day. We'll see you same time, same place next week.
Next week, get in here and get your ketones tested. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.